morning everyone, welcome back to Dottie's Adventures. When I decided to buy a small car to convert into a micro camper, I had a couple of choices available to me as to how I would do that, and I spent a bit of time thinking about what the pros and cons of each one would be, and I decided to go for a self-build. And now in this video I just want to sort of chat to you about why I chose a self-build over what a lot of people do, which is to buy a boot jump. I'll explain what a boot jump is if you don't know what it is as we go through the video. But I thought I'd talk about the pros and cons of both a boot jump and a self-build, and perhaps some of the other options that are available, and also explain why I chose to do a self-build despite not having any skills whatsoever. So yeah, let's get on with it. So I can tell from the comments that some of you are watching these videos because you have aspirations to have a little micro camper yourself, something that you can have as a little adventure wagon similar to Dottie, that you can take anywhere. They're manoeuvrable, they're flexible, they're cheap to insure, all of the good things about having a micro camper. But you might be wondering what the options are for actually making your vehicle into a usable camper van. And one of the options is to buy a ready-made, what they call a boot jump. Now, I'll be honest, I hadn't even heard about a boot jump until about 6 months ago, when I started on this journey of wanting a little micro camper for myself. So to give you a little bit of an understanding of what a boot jump is, if like me you're unaware like I was, a boot jump is basically, it's a prefabricated box system that fits into the back of your car. Now some of them I think just literally fit in the boot, so you don't have to remove any seats. You literally just flip the seats down and the boot jump goes in the back. It's a bed system, it's seating system. They're very clever. They look amazingly clever, and they normally have storage built into them with sort of pull-out kitchens and things like that, so you have a butane stove or something that you can cook on inside the compartments, and they look amazing. And I think for a lot of people it's a really easy way to turn your car into a usable camping vehicle. So if they're dead easy, why did I not choose to go for a boot jump? Well, I'm going to look at boot jumps and then I'm going to look at self-builds, and I just want to go through some of the pros and cons of both. Now the thing is, I put in the title, is boot jump or self-build best? And the truth is, there is no such thing as best overall. There's just best for you or best for me and our particular use case, what we want to use the vehicle for, what we need it to be, how we want it to feel. There's lots of things that are going to make it that are going to make either a boot jump or a self-build best. There is no best really, it's just best for you. And best for me turned out, I believe, to be the self-build. But let's look at the pros and cons of each. So let's start with a boot jump, because I did consider it. I have to say only briefly, but I did consider it. So a boot jump, because it's lightweight and designed to just slot into the back of the car, it's easy. There's no DIY skills needed. You don't have to have any, design skills. It's all being done for you. And also it means that there's no permanent change to the vehicle. It's literally put in and take out, so you're not making any modifications to the vehicle at all. That means that actually setting it up is really quick. I'm sure there's a technique to them all, and they're all slightly different, I'm sure, but they're quick to put in, quick to take out, so you can convert your vehicle within minutes from your daily drive into a camping vehicle, which for many of you is going to be a really big tick in the box, a big selling point. As I've already said, you don't need any DIY skills, you don't have to build anything. you literally put it in the vehicle. I think it clips in so it's sturdy, and that's it, done. There's no DIY skills needed. You don't have to have any practical ability whatsoever other than being able to put it in and out of the car. Job done. I think they're probably more insurance friendly than a conversion. However, I will caveat that with some of the forums that I've been reading, you still do need to let your insurance company know if you've got a boot jump. However, because you're not making any structural or any modifications to the vehicle at all, there shouldn't be any reason why you can't get insurance. Just as if it was your normal car, because effectively it is. You're just putting something in the boot. But be aware that from my understanding and the research I've done, even with a boot jump, you still need to let your insurance company know that you're using your car as camper with a boot jump. So that's all the benefits, I guess. One of the other benefits, I suppose, of a boot jump is you still have a car with all of its seats. So if you need your car on a day-to-day basis as a family car, a boot jump could be ideal because you're not taking out seats. You're not. It's very easy to convert it back to being your daily drive. So if you need the car, if it's your only car, that could be a real tick in the box for a boot jump. However, some of the cons. When I was looking at boot jumps, they look pretty expensive for what they are. Even sort of looking second-hand, and I have looked at a few second-hand ones, you're still looking at probably nearly £1,000 for a boot jump. And brand new, they look to be potentially a few £1,000s. So it's quite a chunky investment for what is in effect a few bits of wood bolted together to make some storage and a bed. And I don't want to be sort of flippant about this, but if you have got some DIY skills, some carpentry skills, if you've got the tools to be able to do it, actually you could probably make a boot jump yourself, because buying a proprietary one, I'm sure they're very well designed, they look very well designed, but they are quite expensive for what is effectively some plywood bolted together. The other thing, of course, you've got limited customization. They are made to measure for your vehicle. They're proprietary. Everything you get the same box, if you like. There's not a lot of personalization. So if you're looking to have your camper van feel like a little home on wheels, you're probably not going to get that with a boot jump. This is completely my opinion, by the way, and you may be out there shouting at the screen disagreeing with me, and that's absolutely fine. But my perception of boot jumps is they're not very customizable, they're not very personalizable. Is that even a word? They're very practical, very utilitarian, I suppose. Because they are a kind of a one-size-fits-all, you've got a limited ability to make the best use of the space, all the little nooks and crannies in your vehicle. You can't really customize the storage space. It's in a box, and it's a ready-made box, so personalization is pretty limited. For me, they're just a bit less homely. I wanted my micro camper to feel like a home on wheels, to feel like it reflected me and my style and my sort of my quirks, I suppose. And a boot jump isn't going to do that, because it's just a very utilitarian box. So it's not going to feel potentially as homely as a self-build would. Although I only want to use Dotty for the occasional short overnight, maybe 1 or 2 night maximum trips, if I did want to use it for longer trips, because I'm building it to my specifications and my designs, I feel like it's going to be better suited to longer trips, whereas the boot jump feels like it would be better suited to shorter day camping or just overnight camping. I think they're probably great if you're moving from a tent and you're used to tent camping and you just want something that's going to give you better protection from the elements. But that's not really what I was looking for. So for me, the fact that it's not as integrated, I suppose, if that's the right word, was a big con. I also wonder if the resale on your boot jump is going to be as good as a good self-build. I don't know for sure, but you know, at the end of the day, once the boot jump is out, you're selling a car and a boot jump separately. So I don't know. I would guess I question whether the residual value in the investment of buying a boot jump is going to be as good as, say, turning it into a permanent structure. I don't know. I've done the pros and cons of a boot jump. Let me talk about the pros and cons that I see of a self-build, and I'm going to start with the pros first. So for me, it's about being fully customizable, being able to put my own stamp on the vehicle, my own design preferences, my own style, and that's really important to me. The other thing with doing the self-build is I could control the costs much better. If I wanted to buy a boot jump, it was going to cost me at least £1,000. If you know, and if I wanted to buy brand new, probably looking at three or 4,000 for a really good one. I have a very small budget for converting Dotty. As you know, if you've watched my channel before, where we also have a large camper van sort of / motorhome. We're in the process of buying a brand new one, and quite honestly, it's not cheap. It was a lot of money. So to invest a huge amount of money in what is effectively a little toy for me, a little project, a little hobby, I just didn't have a huge budget to invest in Dotty. So by doing a self-build, I could really control the costs. I will do a video about the overall cost of converting this, but so far we're talking the low hundreds for everything, because I've tried as best I can to reuse things I already had. So for example, the worktop we already had, I got the kitchen units free of Freecycle. All of the material that I've used for curtains, for the window blinds, I already had that material from previous projects. We've utilised as much as we can stuff that we already had. The sink, for example, is just an old stainless steel salad bowl. So we haven't bought an awful lot of brand new stuff. We had to buy things like wood and the vinyl flooring, but even we haven't got the bed in place yet, but even then we're looking at finding a second-hand IKEA bed frame so we can use the bed slats and use the wood to create the bed. So we're trying to keep it really low budget, and actually in many ways being able to do that has been fun, because it's amazing how creative you can get and how opportunities show up when you're looking to keep costs down. It's been a fun process just finding ways to keep the costs low. I think as well for me, one of the big things about doing the self-build was the personal growth that I was going to get from it, and the satisfaction of seeing something move from an idea in your head to a reality is so satisfying. It's really fulfilling. So for me, that has been a big pro as well. I think in terms of the utilisation of the space, it is a very small space. So I've been able to decide how to optimise the space for my personal needs, whereas with a boot jump I probably wouldn't have been able to have that level of optimisation because it's already prefabricated. I believe that a well executed self-build will add value to the vehicle. I might be wrong on that, but my perception is that if we do this well, when we come to sell the vehicle, it will hold its value. Time will tell, but that's my belief at the moment. And again, for me, I think it's that long-term suitability for living in this. Now, I have no intention of living in Dotty. I have a house, I have a husband. But I think if you wanted to have longer trips away, or if you did want to live in your vehicle, having a self-build, that means you can make the vehicle suit your particular needs. A self-build has got to be better. And just the convenience of things like being able to have it so that you can cook inside the vehicle. I might be wrong on this, but from what I've seen, boot jumps all appear to have the cooking system pull out of a drawer from underneath the bed, which kind of means you've got to be cooking outside. And for me, you know, we live in the UK, that's not always going to be possible. I wanted to be able to utilise the internal space to cook if I wanted to without having to get out. I'll put a bit of footage later showing you where this really came into its own the other day when I took Dotty out. As you can hear, the weather is not the best. It is absolutely chucking it down outside. I've come away just for a couple of hours. I've brought some milk, I've brought tea bags, I picked up a sandwich to have something to eat, and I've just realised that my gas stove to make a cup of tea is in the boot underneath the floor, so I have to open the tailgate to get it, and I'm not going to do that because it is hammering it down. The truth is, though, there are cons about doing a self-build, as I have absolutely found out. So one of the biggest ones is it is time consuming. You know, if I'd bought a boot jump, I could have had Dotty on the road and been away camping in the time it took to have the boot jump arrive and we put it in the vehicle. As it happens, we've had Dotty just over a month. I still don't have a bed. I've not taken her away camping in her yet, so it's time consuming. And although we haven't been working on Dotty every single day, we've put a lot of hours into this, and it can be a little bit demoralizing because a lot of the work doesn't seem to be taking you very far. It feels like you're doing a lot and not making much progress. I suppose like most projects, everything comes together in the last sort of 10% of the time, doesn't it? So it is quite time consuming. You also need skills. You know, I'm not going to lie, I don't have the skills. I could not have done what I've done this far without Mark and the fact that my husband has, you know, endless DIY skills. So it has been a learning curve. I would actually add this to one of the pros thinking about it. Doing a self-build, if you don't have skills, is great for personal growth, because I've learned so much about carpentry, about laying a floor, about, you know, working with different metals, working with power tools, understanding sort of just a number of different things like the plumbing, and not that it's got a huge amount of plumbing in, it's basically got a hose going into a water canister. But I've learned a lot that I didn't know. But if you don't have somebody who can help you with those skills, or you don't feel confident that you have the skills to do this, then it's definitely going to be a con for doing a self-build. And if you don't know what you're doing, as I don't, then mistakes can be costly, which is part of the reason why I'm very happy to be using reclaimed and, you know, repurposed things, because if I've got something free, if I mess it up, I haven't really lost anything. But for example, buying the flooring, it wasn't hugely expensive, but I did make a few mistakes putting the floor down, and that means that those planks, those vinyl planks, are wasted. So yes, it can be costly if you make mistakes when you're learning. And whilst I did say earlier that a boot jump can be quite expensive, actually doing a self-build could also run away with you. The costs could run away with you if you haven't got access to a lot of the things that you already need. So for example, we've got a garage full of power tools, but if I was starting from scratch and I had to go out and buy those tools to be able to do the job, that would add a lot to the cost. If I was looking at high-end furnishings, if I was looking at potentially buying a ready-made bed, for example, or buying in ready-made carpentry, because it's slightly different to a boot jump, you can buy ready-made cabinets and things, so you're still doing a self-build, but you're buying the cabinets. Somebody else has got the skills, you're paying somebody else to make them. The costs could really run away with you, so it could be expensive if you don't have access to a lot of the tools and things that you would need, or if you're not willing to do, which as I've done, which is sort of use second-hand and repurpose things. And there's nothing wrong with it. If you want it to be absolutely gorgeous and all brand new, absolutely, why not? But it might put the cost up quite considerably. I think as well, when you're doing a self-build, your insurance is likely to be affected. You might not be able to insure it just as a standard vehicle. I've just gone through this. I talked about this in my last video. I didn't have any problems insuring it as such, but I did have to be very, very clear about what modifications I've made to the vehicle. So it can just be a little bit of a minefield, and it can feel a little bit daunting trying to get insurance for a modified vehicle. It's not easily reversible. You know, everything we've done to Dottie, we've tried really hard to be non-destructive about it. So if anybody did buy this vehicle off us and they wanted to convert it back into just a standard car, they can, but it's not easy to do that. It's not like a boot jump where you literally pull the boot jump out and flip the seats back up and there you go, you've got a car. They would have to do a little bit of work to make this back to as it was, especially things like we've taken the wheelchair ramp off, and we haven't taken it off, we've literally cut it. We've taken the winch out, so if anybody wanted to buy this back as a wheelchair adapted vehicle, which it would need to be, because I think I don't know if you could put standard chairs back in because it was already modified with a dropped floor. I don't know, but it would be very hard to reverse this and put it back to being a car. And I think the biggest con around a self-build is decision fatigue. You're constantly solving problems, you're constantly trying to come up with ideas, you're constantly trying to make decisions about how you want it to look, how you want it to work. And really, until you start using it, you don't know if those decisions are going to be good ones or bad ones. And I imagine I'm going to have to redo a lot of what I've already done once I start using this, when I realise that I didn't get it right. And I think that can be quite overwhelming. There have definitely been times when I have stood and cried during this build. And this is a very simple one, believe me. It's not a complicated conversion, but it's felt overwhelming and I've got quite emotional about it. And the decision fatigue is real. I think it's something that it's definitely worth having somebody else that you can bounce ideas off, so that you can kind of share that decision load. But yeah, it can be quite challenging. So as I said right at the beginning, I don't think there is a best solution per se. I think there's just a best for you and what you want from your camper van. So the idea of this video wasn't to say this is what you should do or this is what you shouldn't do, more just to potentially give you some food for thought based on the ideas and the thought processes that I had when I was deciding whether to fully convert Dottie or just buy a boot jump. There are another couple of things that helped to make the decision for me that really have less to do with the pros and cons of a boot jump over a self-build, and a lot more to do just with me. The first one is I retired in January of this year, so I've been retired now 9 months, and I wanted some sort of project. I wanted something that would challenge me, put me out of my comfort zone. I've spent my whole married life letting Mark do all of the DIY, all of the practical stuff, because he's good at it. He's got the skills, he's a trained engineer, he's been, he's got a brain that works that way, and he's also had many years of experience at sort of DIY and engineering and problem solving. But I really wanted to challenge myself to be able to learn some of those skills, because I have time on my hands now, and also because we never know what's around the corner. And touch wood, no point in touching that, it's plastic, touch wood, that is wood, I won't ever be on my own, and I will always have Mark there to help me with stuff, but we never know. So I kind of wanted to do something that would put me in a position where I had to learn new skills. And buying a boot jump didn't feel like that would challenge me in any way. So building Dotty as a self-build ticked that box for me. And most of us have two major resources available to us. We are either or. We either have time or we have money. As I've already mentioned, I didn't have a big budget for this project. We put money into another van, so I couldn't justify spending lots of money on Dotty. But I did have time, and it made more sense to invest the time to get what I want rather than just spending to get what I want. I guess the other resource, as well as time and money, is skill. Now, I didn't have the skill, as I've already mentioned, but I wanted to gain those skills, and I've learned so much. The other factor, I suppose, around building Dotty out as a self-build rather than a boot jump, I kind of alluded to this already. I wanted this to be a complete reflection of me, my style, my quirks, my preferences. I wanted it to be unique and different to anything else that anybody else has got, and I couldn't do that with a boot jump. And people are going to look at my conversion and go, oh God, I couldn't live with that, oh I don't like that. That's fine. It was something for me. I wanted it to be mine. When we get our new camper van, I know that Mark will not want it to look the way I've got Dotty. He won't want all the flowers, and he won't want all the floral curtains and the country feel to it. That's just not his style. And because it's our van, a combined van, I've got to be very aware that it's not just my style that I have to think about. I have to think of his preferences too. So I wanted Dotty to be a complete reflection of me, and I wanted it to be somewhere that when I came into the van, whether it's every day as my daily drive or when I take her away on little adventures, that when I get into her and I sit in her or I sleep in her, she feels like my little tiny home on wheels, that she feels like a sanctuary. She already does, she's not even finished yet, but she feels like my sanctuary. And that's what I really wanted, and I would not have got that, I don't think, from putting in a boot jump. I could only get that from building her out around my own personal quirks. Does that make sense? I hope it does. Anyway, I don't know how long this video is. I can talk a lot. I hope you found it useful anyway, in helping you to perhaps make a decision as to what would work best for you. There is no right or wrong, and I'm certainly not saying that my way is the best way. It's just the best way for me. Anyway guys, thank you so much for watching. If you've enjoyed this, please do consider hitting the like button and leave a comment below. Let me know, what would you prefer? The convenience and ease of a boot jump, or the challenge of a self-build. Let me know which would suit you best and why. I'm very interested, genuinely. And if you've enjoyed this, please consider hitting the subscribe button. That way YouTube knows that you enjoy this type of content. It'll show you more of it, and it will show you my future videos as well. I'll leave it there, and I'll talk to you again really soon. Take care. Bye.